And welcome to this episode of the Capitalized Life and Retirement Show. I'm your host, Matthew Johnson, president and owner of Johnson Wealth and Income Management, a retirement income source located in Clear Lake and Humboldt, Iowa, serving clients in northern Iowa and southern Minnesota. Well, how are you today? I hope you're doing well, taking a little bit of time for yourself. And if you're brand new to this program, I just want to give you a very warm first welcome. I'm Matthew Johnson, financial advisor and fiduciary, and my commitment to you on this radio show is to give you what you need so that you can be successful in retirement. Now, often, every single one of us has our own definition of a successful retirement, and often that is contrived or it is kind of designed by the things that we get to do or the things that we want to do. But at the end of the day, isn't it true that a successful retirement is having more income than you actually need? When you think about it, income really does bring peace of mind. Income helps to provide you certainty. It helps to provide you that peace of mind to sleep at night, knowing that you're going to have the income so that you can do what you want when you want to do it for however long you want to do it and with whomever you want to do it with. But as it turns out, we have lots and lots of liabilities. We have lots and lots of things that out of nowhere, they can seem to impact and sometimes unknowingly almost devastate a person's retirement. And I'd love to be able to sit back and I'd love to be able to tell you the stocks to invest in. I'd love to be able to tell you the timing and the amount and all of the things that seem so attractive and so romantic about having a successful portfolio. But we can't just talk about the things that we need to be doing, how we need to be investing. We have to also be looking at the less savory things. And today we're entitling today's program, The Risk That Everyone Wants to Ignore. You see, when you think about all of the time that you have spent saving, diligently following the rules to put money aside for retirement, and I'm sure you've done everything that you can. You've participated in the 401k, the 403b. You've deferred enough out of your paycheck to, number one, have an impact on your taxes by, deferring enough into the 401k to reduce the amount that you pay taxes on that you're reporting to the IRS. I'm certain you're putting in enough to be able to maximize and take advantage of the employer match that your employer might be providing you. I'm certain that you've done your work in trying to think about putting money aside, not only in the pre-tax side of things, but also in the Roth side, so that when you get to retirement, you don't have just all pre-tax money, right? You've tried to be diversified. You've tried to make certain that you're being smart about what you're investing your money in and the various different funds or the various different asset classes that you can invest your money in. But what if I suggested to you that there is a liability that is in your future or potentially in your future that could literally wipe out everything that you've worked hard to save? This is the liability that we all want to ignore. This is the liability that so many people don't want to talk about because it's very uncomfortable. And what could be such a big liability? Is it the liability of running out of money? Well, you're close, but that's not it. The liability is long-term care. If we think about following the rules and doing everything well, but then realizing that really 7 out of 10 people at some point in their life are going to require long-term care. All of a sudden, that makes us take a little bit closer of a look at long-term care. And especially because when you think about it, in 2025, the here and the now, where we are today, long-term care costs across America are averaging anywhere from $109,000 for basic care to as much as $131,000. Think about that. When you consider that, that's anywhere from $9,000 to $11,000 a month. What if that happened to you? What if that happened to your spouse? Now, if statistically 7 out of 10 people are going to be potentially utilizing long-term care, then why is it that financial advisors simply are not talking about this? Why are they not taking note of this liability? After all, as an advisor, as a fiduciary, my responsibility is to help my clients to avoid the risks that are ahead of them in life. So why is it that we don't want to talk about it? Well, number one, it's kind of like having a state university tuition for years and years and years. My youngest daughter is going to school. Tuition is a lot more expensive today than it was even a decade ago. But the reality is whether you're looking at skilled care, whether you're looking at home health care, which can be obviously a little bit less expensive. Home health care is running about $72,000. Assisted living's maybe about $67,000 on average. That's still anywhere from $5,000 to $7,000 a month. It's pretty darn expensive. So the question is, what if you happen to be one of the statistics? What are you doing today to protect yourself from obviously one of the most expensive liabilities that you potentially could have in retirement? A liability that could literally wipe out an entire nest egg. And I can say one thing, these costs on average, they're pretty scary. But thank goodness that we live in Iowa. Thank goodness that we live in Minnesota. If you live in Alaska, if you live in Canada, we're talking opposite ends of the nation, you could be looking at costs that range anywhere from $180,000 to as much as $300,000 a year, depending upon the type of care that you need. It's completely, that's unimaginable in my mind, paying $300,000 a year for care. But yet I know it's the reality for some folks. I know this because I have many of my clients who are taking care of their parents. Many of my clients that are the financial powers of attorney for their parents. And I see what their parents are having to spend every single month for long-term care costs. So if the statistics are so high, if 7 out of 10 of us, and we don't know if we're going to be the 7, we don't know if we're going to be the 3, are potentially liable for this tremendous expense that we know can be really the reason for the loss of the family farm. It can be the reason for the decimation of a person's retirement. It can be the reason that the quote-unquote surviving spouse has to live on next to nothing because the other spouse has gone into long-term care. What are we doing about it? How can we even protect ourselves from such a massive liability? Well, number one, we have to look at the stats some more. When it comes to long-term care, we know that the average stay in a long-term care facility for the average American is roughly about, say, 3.2 years. For the average woman is going to utilize long-term care of some capacity for 3.7 years. The average man is going to utilize long-term care in some capacity for approximately 2.2. So you're looking at an average of about 3.2. But when you think about it, long-term care is something that we have the ability of being able to cover. Now, just kind of humor me as I take you through this. Oftentimes I, find many clients that have money in the bank, and I find that as human beings, we tend to keep way more in the bank, and this is a topic we've discussed before, but we keep way more money in the bank than what we typically ought to as human beings. And I share a funny little story. I say, I want you to just imagine you're on the way to coffee one morning. And on your way to coffee, all of a sudden, somebody T-bones your car. And your car is totaled. And because of the accident, well, you have to go to the hospital. And they keep you there overnight for observation. And while you're there, you get a phone call from your spouse. And that spouse says, honey, something terrible has happened. We had a windstorm in the middle of the night. And a big limb fell out of the tree and it hit our roof and it damaged our roof. Now, I don't know about you, but that's the definition of a pretty bad day. But yet, when we think about it, do we have automobile coverage? I'm willing to bet that you do. How much is your deductible? Let's just kind of pretend for right now that your deductible is $1,000. Do you have health insurance? Now, of course, this could be, this can vary from person to person, but let's say that you're over the age of 65. Let's say you're on Medicare. Well, if you have Medicare Part A, Part B, and you got a Medicare supplement, what's your maximum deductible? Maybe $500? So you got health insurance coverage. Do you have homeowners coverage? I'm willing to bet that you do. What's your deductible on that? Maybe another $1,000? You see, when we think about it, most of the big liabilities that we have in life, we have already taken it upon ourselves to have this coverage or this liability already covered. And quite honestly, we don't need any more in the bank than maybe about $5 or $10,000. Well, when you think about the single largest liability, long-term care, and you think about how much it costs, and you compare the likelihood of needing long-term care compared to the chances that you're going to get into a car accident and total your car, the chances that your home is going to burn down to the ground, and you're going to need that homeowner's coverage. Why is it that so many people don't have this liability covered? And the answer is simple. The answer is that most people are scared of paying the premium. Now, as we come back from this first half of the radio show, we want to discuss, is there ways that you can actually get what you want to protect you and your loved one, your spouse, from such a big liability? Sit tight and you'll find out the answer. And welcome back to the second half of the Capitalized Life and Retirement Show. I'm your host, Matthew Johnson, president and owner of Johnson Wealth and Income Management, a retirement income source located in Clear Lake and Humboldt, Iowa, serving clients in northern Iowa and southern Minnesota. Well, how are you today? If you're just joining us, welcome to today's program. Today we're discussing the single largest liability that you or I will have in retirement. It's a statistical probability that 70% of Americans before they die are going to experience this liability. What is this risk? Is it the risk of running out of money? And the answer is no. It's something that is so obvious to all of us, and yet so many of us, we choose to ignore this liability. And if you haven't guessed what it is yet, it is the liability of long-term care. 7 out of 10 people, statistically, in the United States are going to need some sort of long-term care. Now, your care might vary. Maybe you won't even use care. Maybe you'll be one of the lucky ones where you just pass away peacefully in your sleep and you don't need any kind of assisted living or home health care or convalescent skilled care. But what about your spouse? These are all things that we need to be thinking about because we can play by the rules. We can save all the money. We can take advantage of tax deductibility, and we can take advantage of Roth IRA contributions, and we can do what we need to do to invest in the right fund or the right stock or the right annuity or the right bond or whatever that instrument might be. And yet if long-term care liability strikes your portfolio, your retirement nest egg, it can be gone within a matter of years. So what is the answer? Well, number one, We know that women tend to have a longer usage of long-term care than that of men. But nevertheless, where I remember in the late 1990s when I got in the business as an advisor, that the average stay in a nursing home was 2.5 years. Today we see that the average stay is around 3.2. It's getting longer, right? We know that life expectancy is getting longer. We know we've got a pill to keep you alive. And so maybe we haven't necessarily increased the quality of life, but we've definitely increased the quantity of life. So what do we do? Well, here's some things to consider. First and foremost, long-term care and applying for long-term care coverage, because we know it's a liability that we can cover. We can hire an insurance company to cover that liability for us, either in part or in whole. We know that it's going to cost money. But the sooner you act to get that coverage, the better off you're going to be. Statistically, and the latest statistics that I could find was from 2021. And of course, maybe COVID changed the stats then. But let's say that these stats are halfway accurate. In 2021, people that were ages 60 to 64, 30% of the applicants were denied coverage because of health conditions. That same grouping of individuals, 70 to 74, 47% of applicants for long-term care were denied coverage. So what this is telling us is that even though we think about long-term care as a far life event, something that's going to not happen to us until our late 70s, early 80s, maybe even late 80s. Purchasing long-term care in advance, well in advance of that liability, is potentially going to save us a ton of money. Now, I've heard it. I think I've heard almost every plausible excuse that there is for not purchasing long-term care. And one of the biggest reasons is the expense. One of the second biggest reasons is because, well, Matthew, I don't know if I'm actually going to have long-term care. Well, that's true. But you also don't know that your house is going to burn down, but you have homeowners coverage. You don't know that your car is going to get totaled, but you have automobile coverage. And guess what? In neither one of those risks do you have a 70% chance of needing to use it. So the point here is the prudent man is going to think about this liability, the length and the breadth and the depth of this liability, and they're going to do what is necessary in order to be able to protect that nest egg. Because let's face it, long-term care is responsible for the family farm disappearing. Long-term care is responsible for the absolute erosion and decline and collapse of so many retirement nest eggs here in America. So how are you going to do it? Well, insurance and the protection of that insurance is the single best approach. People can do all the estate planning in the world, and no doubt I'm an advocate for that. If you've listened to this radio show for any length of time, you know that I encourage all of my clients, I encourage all of you as listeners to get your household in order, to figure out if you're going to use a will or you're going to use a trust, and if you're going to use a trust, which one, and what you're going to do with those assets. But let's face it, if long-term care expenses take everything that you've got, all the best estate planning in the world is not going to save you. It's not going to protect any sort of legacy to go to your family. So how do we do it? Because those premiums are expensive. Well, number one, today, my friends, there are more ways to cover long-term care than there ever has been ways. You can look at standalone coverage that is specifically designed to provide nothing but long-term care, whether that's in your home, whether that's assisted living, and you want to be able to go to one of these ritzy, fancy places that doesn't even feel like a long-term care facility, and they got all the activities, they got all the nice views, they've got all the amenities. They even have the concierge, okay? You can have that sort of care at some of the fancier places that you would choose to. Are you going to pay for it? Absolutely, you're going to pay for it. But guess what? How are you going to pay for the long-term care insurance? Well, this is where how you invest your portfolio is going to be of absolute crucial necessity. You see, if you've worked hard to accumulate, when you get to the distribution stage of your life, you have two priorities. Priority number one is to preserve and to protect the principal. Okay? Stop risking your neck in Wall Street just simply because they say that it's the best place for your money. Okay? Why do you think that they want your money? We have to wake up to the reality. Okay? Now, there's nothing to say that you can't have money in the market, but do you want to continue to risk all of your nest egg, as large as it is today, to the whims of Wall Street, the whims of politicians, the whims of the economy? So your number one priority is principal preservation. Number two, I would contend, is income production. If you think about why you've worked so hard to save this money, you saved it so you could supplement your retirement. Well, I want you to just think about how your life would change. What would change in your life if all of a sudden you were able to significantly reduce your risk, and all of a sudden you were able to double, maybe triple, maybe even quadruple or more the amount of interest and dividends coming off from your portfolio. Let's say that you had $1 million you had worked your hind end off for, and now that money is producing $50,000, $60,000 of interest and dividends every single year. And you had a long-term care insurance premium that cost you $5,000 for the year. Would you really care? Would you really, really care if your portfolio was producing $60,000 in dividends and you took $5,000 of the $60,000 and you paid the long-term care and you still had $55,000 left to live on? Would you really care about that premium? Chances are you wouldn't care nearly as much because it wasn't coming out of your principal. It was simply a byproduct of how you were investing. Now, you know that I'm somewhat skeptical of these things, but we have to talk about annuities because many annuities today and insurance companies have created annuities where it is an annuity, but at the same time, it's providing you an opportunity for enhanced withdrawal benefits if all of a sudden you develop the inability of performing activities of daily living. In other words, you have a stroke and now you can't eat and you can't bathe yourself. Well, guess what? Now you have the ability of taking money back out of that annuity and using the benefits from that annuity to pay for that long-term care. It's taking and reducing the effect of the cost of that real care. It's astounding to me how people don't want to buy the long-term care premium because it costs $5,000, and yet they fail to recognize that the average cost in America today for 1 year of care can be as much in this location in Iowa and Minnesota as anywhere from $100,000 to $130,000 a year. To me, if I could exchange $5,000 for $100,000 of protection, I would do it every day of the week. So key number one is you have to have a plan. You have to do it sooner rather than later because age is going to work against you. You have to have a way to pay for it. And if you're properly invested for the distribution stage of your life, the stage of life that you need income anyway, so you're naturally investing for principal preservation and maximization of income, you're going to naturally have the income out of your portfolio every year to be able to cover that cost. So what's another way? Another way is life insurance. So many life insurance companies today are providing types of life insurance that if you die, well, guess what? It pays a normal death benefit. But if you're alive and you develop that inability of performing activities of daily living, now all of a sudden you can use the death benefit in lieu and pay the cost of your long-term care. You see, that almost completely eliminates the excuses. Because yes, you're right. You might buy long-term care insurance and all of a sudden you don't use it. You die. Well, guess what? If you have a life insurance policy, it's going to pay a death claim. And if you live and you need to have long-term care, it's going to provide that as well. So you see, friends, this is a big liability. It's a liability that everyone wants to ignore, but it's not that big of a liability that we can't deal with it. We just have to be creative. We have to be clever, and we have to be intentional. I'm Matthew Johnson. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And remember, it's up to you to make today a great day.